This video is only part of an unpaid, unbiased, in-depth review from an average rider's perspective, so check out the rest in the link below at thegoodride.com. If this video helps, please consider subscribing and buying through our links, or even better, become a member on YouTube or Patreon. You'll get exclusive access to video review shorts as we test gear, along with a lot of other perks. So thanks for watching, and I hope this review helps. Welcome to The Good Ride. I'm James Beastie, and because snowboarding's beyond words, I just talk about the gear. And this is the Burton Deep Daze. I rode this with the Burton Kendo and Union Atlas. I got this in some pretty varied conditions when it comes to powder. I've taken this out many days now. I wanted to do an in-depth test before doing a review, so I got it out in some pretty good Pacific Northwest powder on the lighter side, but still not blower light. Then I got some medium powder, and then some pretty wind affected powder with almost just the emerging layer of crust on top, which was the least favorite of these three. And to give you a short summary, what I found is this Burton Deep Daze is a very interesting ride. It wasn't for me. I am more about the 3D fish. I like that better for the conditions I ride. But I think if you're somebody who rides in light blower powder and you want to use these channels on the tail to throw a little more spray, get a little more snow in the air, and to have it track a little better than you would think for a flat to rocker board, I think this could work for you. I found that the channels in thicker, wetter snow seem to grab a little too much and make you feel a little more locked in than you would think you would be for a 3D board. Usually the lifted sides help you transfer quickly and smoothly in snow and have this really cool turning experience. Thicker snow, the channels at the bottom seem to lock in that board and kind of sometimes negate that 3D feel in the nose. But the lighter it got, the better the turning experience. So this is a great board for blower pow. Now, when it comes to sizing, this 59 was perfect for my specs. I was a little on the heavy side at 185 to 190. It fit my 9s perfectly. I'd say like 9 to 10 is a good sizing for this. And it's interesting because the reason why I wanted this was because I felt the 56 3D fish could sometimes feel a little small in really deep, low angle powder in compared to some other boards that I've tried same day against it. So I thought, oh man, you know, the 159 has similar sizing recommendations to the 156, so I thought I would get that. And it does pretty well for my specs, just like the 3D fish in a 156. I keep wondering if I should go 61 with the 3D fish because that has just a little more float, and when you're in deep powder, going bigger isn't a big problem like it is for a board where you're gonna ride in groomers and powder. It's just easier to turn a board in powder, so I thought I'd go up. But with this 59 Deep Daze, it did a great job. Now, when it comes to the shape, this is tapered and directional, pretty standard, pretty set back on board and on side cut. But then when you get into the camber profile and the bends all throughout this board, it is very unique. You have these channels, 2 through the nose and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through the tail. And it's a very unique kind of channel. It's not like the 3D fish where they have some lifted tech here and there. It's just hard to wax, but it's not really influencing the turn the way that the Deep Daze does. And these channels make the board in softer snow feel more locked in. It tracks more straight. And the thicker the snow, I found it was a little more challenging to turn. The lighter the snow, I felt the channels less, and they just threw nice turns, and it seemed to be a little bit bigger spray. I can't say for certain because every turn is different, but on average it felt a little better. And it's not very technical. It's not for advanced experts, but that locked in feel makes me want to recommend it more for more advanced riders. So when it comes to the flex, it's medium stiff, medium stiff. You can see the nose is not much softer. And like all Burton boards, it has very good pop for a flat to rocker board. like this gives you more energy than you would think for what you're getting camber profile wise. So there's good pop for powder. You can butter with this, you can butter off the tail pretty easy, you can butter off the nose pretty easy, despite the flex being more ubiquitous from nose to tail. I didn't have problems leaning back into this board and wheeling up in powder. And when it comes to speed and base glide, in the past, especially with my 3D fish from I think 2 years ago now, Burton was experimenting with recycled bases and trying to find a way to deliver a more eco-friendly board. Unfortunately, some of the bases they were making were coming out a little chalky and a little slow. This base had good glide to it. It's not epic, effortless, easy glide, but it was very good upper tier glide, and when I waxed it, I didn't get that chalky feel. I'd stick to Burton wax and it's pretty good. Now this isn't a bomber board. It does feel locked in a little more than the Burton fish. The Burton fish feels a little more turny. This feels like it likes to point it a little bit more, but it's still a very turny, very setback, very surfy, very slashy. It's not for just mocking down an open powder face. It's just not that kind of style of board. Now, when it comes to uneven terrain, I put this through mainly good powder. I didn't really get a lot of uneven terrain, but I think it's fine. The only thing that concerns me a little bit is those channels. Sometimes in uneven terrain, they can grab a little bit and not want to turn when you want them to. They'll want to track straight as you're trying to turn right. And I felt that a couple times going through the trees. I go down this cinder cone and then you get into the trees and the conditions just change instantly sometimes to where it's uneven underneath. It's hard, it's sticky. You have to make some turns around trees, fallen trees underneath the snow, and this sometimes didn't want to turn when I wanted it to, and I didn't like that. Now when it comes to edge hold, this is fine. It's a powder board. You don't want this if you're dropping in really deep icy chutes and there's powder maybe 20 meters down, but the grip is good enough. It lets go a little bit in harder snow, but it's not terrible. A good rider can make this grip in any condition they want. Now when it comes to turn initiation, again, like I said numerous times throughout this review, it turns really quickly and it's really responsive in lighter powder. The thicker the powder, sometimes the harder it is to initiate that turn and to get it to start going the way you want it to. These channels just interact with thicker snow in a way that I personally didn't like. This isn't a board you get for turning and carving. This is a powder board, a pure powder board. It can do okay on groomers just like the 3D fish, but it's not ideal. Now for powder, you have a very floaty, very directional board, and this is an effortless floater. Just like the 3D fish, it's effortless. It just can float in just about anything you throw at it, as long as you're spec'd correctly for this board. Now, if you set it all the way back with a 21.75 inch stance width, that's what it is all the way back, you can get 5 inches back from center of board. That's really set back, that's really far. And what I liked about the Deep Daze versus the 3D fish is when you set it all the way back with the 3D fish, your stance width is, I think, closer to 23, and this is 21.75. So this works throughout the stance range, and I could get close to my stance width of 21.5 inches and set it almost all the way back because of that. Because I was on Union Atlas, I could go a little further back here and get it to work. So that was great. Now, the one thing is the channels in thicker snow were problematic for me, sometimes turning. I went to go turn, I could always turn, but I felt it just grab a little bit, not want to go the direction I wanted it to, and then it would let go and let me turn. I like the 3D fish's turning experience much better. These channels in the front and these channels in the back kind of negate the lifted sides that make a turning experience so smooth and so flowing in powder. These channels kind of fight that lifted side. So this is a very particular ride. And every day I went out with the 3D fish, I often tested it against other boards, like the Arbor Satori. That had a very smooth, very easy turning experience, a much more centered ride. Then I took out the Capita Spring Break powder racers with the new little camber profile underneath the feet. And it's a little stiffer, a little more damp ride than past years. That had a much easier turning experience for me. Then I would get on this and I would really feel the difference between this and its channels and those other boards when I was riding powder. So it's very unique. I wish I still had my 3D Fish. I got rid of it. I would have loved to have compared that same day. But just going back from memory and all the great days I had on the 3D Fish, I liked that turning experience better in powder. But in terms of float, it's just like all the other great pure powder boards like this, with this flat to rocker profile, a bigger nose than tail, a small tapered tail, lots of taper, and a great setback on board. It's gonna float really well. It's just more of a dry, light powder specialist. So overall, I'm more of a 3D Fish kind of guy. You might like this Deep Daze. You like that more locked in, kind of down the line feel that the channels provide, but you don't want an aggressive, gnarly, down the line kind of board for powder, and you still want to slash and turn, and you see a lot of lighter, fluffier powder. This could work for you. Giving advice on YouTube is very difficult because I need a lot of info from you to actually help. So if you want real advice, fill out the Me Harmony profile in the link below so I can help you properly.